Hello and welcome to Warblog. This is an Iran-Iraq war game, 1982, as part of the autumn offensives, Muslim Ibn Aqil offensive, which is named after the cousin of Imam Hussein, who played an important part in history of the Shiites, says my book. Essentially, the Iranians decide that they are going to launch an assault sort of down here. They're going to break these lines of defence and come all the way down this road and take Baquba. They had no air power, no air support, and the Iraqis had some air power, so but they didn't get much further than, well, it's a bit vague really, so I don't really know where the setup is, so I've sort of guessed a lot of this. I don't think they got as far as these two objectives, which was sort of what they wanted to do. And the book says that they were under no delusion that they would get to Baghdad, which is sort of down here. You need to sort of look at a map, but if this is read this book without blah 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 blah. It said the Iranian military high command had no illusions about its capacity to reach Baghdad, but it hoped to gain ground and force the enemy to redeploy its troops around its capital, which would make it easy for it to break through elsewhere. Essentially, they So the objective was simple: to simultaneously breach the enemy lines in Canaquin. So if we look at the map, Canaquin is there, and Mandali, which is there. So this is what they wanted to do: breach the line basically along there. So that's what I've sort of done that for, in order to advance towards Baquba, which is there, and threaten Baghdad. So that's what they did. That's what they did. I don't want to read through the whole thing, but this comes from the book The Iran-Iraq War by Pierre Razal, and it's much better than the other Iran-Iraq book that I got. It sort of doesn't actually include almost anything from 1982. Battle-wise, sort of has a vague sort of reference to it here and there. I mean, you know, to the year 1982, let alone sort of any particular offensives. And I've not seen this one anywhere else. You can sort of Google it and find it on Google Books, which is a bit odd, but you know, so this is probably, along with a whole bunch of others that you can get from this book, probably quite sort of obscure in the sense that, you know, it's not on Wikipedia. A lot of them are all pretty much the same. So anyway, they tried to sort of come down here, but they fail abysmally. I don't want to read through it all, but I'll probably end up doing that. So I mean, at this point they'd exhausted their stock of TOW missiles, so they could now only rely on Soviet-made anti-tank weapons, which are far less effective. So essentially, they at dawn the Iranian combatants overran Iraqi defences along the hills lining the border between the two countries, which is here. So to be quite honest, maybe I shouldn't include this line. They advanced about 6 miles over the course of the day, but were violently counter-attacked in the afternoon by armoured formations of tanks and dismounted infantrymen. Lacking support from their own tanks, which had stayed back, the Iranian infantrymen were unable to withstand the enemy attack. Lots of Pasadan, which you'll sort of notice, these sort of infantry units. So they sort of retreated and regrouped and assaulted the game the next day and were equally unsuccessful. Since for the first time in the war, the Iraqis used incapacitating CS gas to repel the Iranian human waves. So that's just normal CS gas, which they were. This is not chemical weapons, but regular munitions normally used for demonstrations. You know, Baghdad was barely 60 miles away from here, so it's one of the things about the Iran-Iraq war. From reading this book, the capital of Iran, sort of like, you know, a million miles away to the east. Whereas all the major important facilities and cities for Iraq were sort of on the front line almost, like Baghdad. so they couldn't really fall back very far, whereas the Iranians could fall back almost as far as they liked and still not really lose anything. So basically, and they keep attacking. The Iranians launched on October 5th. They launched another assault on Mandali, and the impact was brutal. But the attackers were no more successful in seizing the town than they had been the previous days. So combat continued, and essentially the Iranian combatants had succeeded in capturing a narrow strip of land about 1.8 miles long, and their failure was obvious, and they had been unable to seize either Kanaquin or Mandali, failed to break through the Iraqi layout, and suffered heavy losses, 6,000 dead and more than 15,000 wounded, versus 2,000 dead and some 50 destroyed tanks on the Iraqi side. Just to give you an idea, the Iranians had 60,000 men and 300 tanks, and the Iraqis had 36,000 men and 400 tanks. So there's 60,000 men going against 36,000 men, and they lose 10% of them dead. So it's quite. And after this, they basically decide not to use the Pasadan as human waves and to engage in a more attrition-based warfare. It talks about discussions in Parliament about this, and the Ayatollah Khomeini, as a result, was ordered the resumption of the nuclear program so they could build nuclear bombs. Considering it's going to be such a long, drawn-out war, they might as well start developing that. They didn't have their nuclear program at the time, so it's all sort of interesting stuff. I don't want to read too much about all of it because the book is endless and I could go on forever. But it's definitely an interesting read, and the whole war is just interesting because of the bloodiness. Now, it's one of these games I'm just never going to be able to play it, so I don't know how well balanced it is. And even just reading that on retrospect, sort of seems that maybe this front line should have been a bit further back. And I don't want to start moving it around at all. The border was sort of here. The Iraq forces had sort of crossed over the border slightly. It's just crazy, really, the number of units involved. It shouldn't be that hard to break through. I mean, even just that point shouldn't be that difficult to break through. So this is a human wave with armoured support. Wow. Wow, I wasn't expecting that. I thought that it was going to be a 7-1, a DE. I mean, that is just stacks and stacks of troops. And I mean, they are just, those defensive positions are tough. I mean, a 1-to-1, yeah, I could have gotten a defender retreat there. I was thinking, I'm not going to use the artillery because I'm obviously going to, I thought perhaps I'd sort of miscalculated how easy it would be. I've sort of tried to keep it roughly on par with the sort of the general unit numbers, but I sort of thought, well, these lines will be easy to break. But obviously they just piled up all their passage around against them, and they've been pushed back. Another thing I find out a bit, not so much odd about this map, but it's clearly odd, is that it's sort of all squished up against this, and there's none of this being used. Well, the reason for that is just simply because the whole idea was to get to Baquba, and so we've got plenty of scope for that, but I don't think it's going to happen. But it's quite crazy, really. I mean, this is the strongest part of the line. Let's see what we can do here with some artillery fire first. 0.4, 0.4. Anti-aircraft shouldn't be in there. 2.7. So let's see what the human wave of Pasadan and small amount of mechanised support can achieve. Well, that was good. With a bit more, a weakened side, 2-1, 151 versus 61. They got an exchange. So it's not going to be a walk in the park, and these are sort of the strongest parts. The middle is, I sort of did the middle a little stronger, although this looks like a weak spot. So I haven't really thought things through so much, but should. Whoops. No back button on this game. Damn. Okay, well, let's try the artillery first. 0.5 damage, and let's try out. You see, there's a smaller stack of units, so 5-1. That was good. How much did we get? We got 0.5, so that was quite a difference, really. So we've destroyed that unit there. And we can take over that trench. So we've made a breakthrough there. I'll leave that stacked in there. So I want to protect the artillery that's also in there and staying with the infantry. There isn't really a lot more that I can do. Okay, so that's all we've got in there. So let's see what we can do here. Artillery strike. Artillery strike. Lots of artillery. Lots of artillery. How much have they got now? So he's down by 6.1, 6.9. That's good. That's working. Seven to 1 DR. Another breakthrough. So I'm still not sort of sure how balanced the actual game is. And it might seem slightly easy, and I'm not saying that it is, but the thing that I'm sort of bearing in mind is that once, because I'm not going to get through this turn, so I'm just sort of just looking at the first initial approaches. Obviously these could have gone the wrong way, like we did there, no ground at all. It's interesting actually, we made some ground here towards the two objectives, but not in the centre. What I'm getting to is, when it's the Iraqi turn, they will have all this artillery, and they've got a lot more artillery, although it's all sort of a battalion level, whereas their artillery is regimental level there. So they're 14s versus 2s. There's still a lot of artillery, and once this artillery comes down on these units, because they're stacked up quite highly, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You know, that's all going to get hit by artillery. Not all of it, only the first 4, because of the little glitch, maybe the first 5, but still, you know, the artillery is going to come in and start decimating both sides, and that's why one of the first things I'm sort of thinking might be an idea is the counter battery fire. But the thing is, the Iraqi artillery, there's no real precedent for this, but I just sort of did it. It's got 6 range, whereas the Iranian artillery has got 5 range. The reason I sort of justified that is because it's probably dug in, whereas this is mobile, so it's, you know, less accurate. But I wouldn't say that's probably true. I mean, to be quite honest, they can probably fire a hell of a lot further than that. They could probably reach into these hexes, you know, but I sort of like to limit the range of them. So that's the basic introduction to this sort of big game. I'm not sure I'm going to continue playing it because it's just going to be too vast, but it looks exciting. So if you want to play it, you think this is a real thing, then sign up and have a blast. Speak to you later, mate.